The email came while I was laying out lemon bars at the charity table. Short, sterile. Family only this year. Please respect our wishes. P.S. Don't make a scene. I froze for half a heartbeat, the tray teetering in my hands before setting it, down with more care than it probably needed. Around me, the local summer fair buzzed with life. Children darting between booths, balloons bobbing lazily in the breeze, a brass band tuning up off to the side. The sun was bright, almost too bright, baking the sidewalk until the air shimmered. I stared at the message a moment longer than I had to. Then I slipped my phone back into my purse, careful not to jostle the thick envelope tucked inside, the one bearing the Hawthorne Industries seal. Inside that envelope, printed on heavy stock paper, were words my family hadn't even bothered to ask about. Chief Executive Officer, Claire Reynolds. Some victories, I decided, deserved better witnesses. I turned back to the table, lifting the plastic wrap from the tray. The lemon bars gleamed under the sun, each one dusted with powdered sugar, neat and perfect, just the way Mom used to teach me when I was 10 years old. Funny, I thought, how muscle memory stayed even when the ties that taught it frayed and snapped. Smiled at a little girl who pointed at the lemon bars with sticky fingers. Go ahead, I said, my voice steady. Take one. She giggled and ran off, bar in hand, leaving a faint trail of powdered sugar in her wake. I wiped my hands on a napkin, squared my shoulders, and lifted my chin to face the day. Because if there was one thing I knew, it was that pretending everything was fine was practically a family tradition, and besides, it wasn't just the email that changed everything that day. That evening, after the fair had wound down and the last echoes of laughter faded into twilight, I found myself scrolling through Beth's social media feed. My cousin had always been the first to post. Weddings, birthdays, Sunday brunches. The family reunion wasn't any different. There they were, my brothers, standing tall and polished under the old oak tree in Dad's backyard. My cousins laughing over a massive grill piled high with steaks. Uncle Mike giving a clumsy toast, half-full beer mug sloshing in hand. Everyone was there. Everyone, except me. I kept scrolling, my thumb numb against the screen. They hadn't just excluded me from the guest list. They'd filled the gap where I used to stand, right between Daniel and Chris, where I'd stood every 4th of July since I was 12. There was a small blonde-headed boy, maybe 5 years old. Beth's caption said he was her neighbor's kid. A sweet addition to the family photo. I blinked at the screen, the harsh blue light making my eyes sting. They hadn't left the space empty. They hadn't let it linger awkwardly. They'd replaced me, neatly, cleanly, as if nature had intended it. Outside my apartment window, the summer night buzzed with cicadas. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine rumbled to life. The world, it seemed, was in no hurry to notice what had shifted. No one was. I set my phone face down on the kitchen table, staring at the faint ring left by my coffee mug. Funny how erasure didn't always feel violent. Sometimes it was soft, almost gentle, like a photo edited with careful hands. And somehow, the empty space hurt more than if they'd left it blank. It was close to midnight when my phone buzzed again. Beth, a video call this time. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Instead, I answered, keeping my face carefully neutral in the pale light of my kitchen. Beth's face filled the screen. Flushed. Teary, the telltale signs of one too many margaritas. Claire, she slurred, her voice wobbling. I'm so sorry. I said nothing, just waited, letting the silence stretch between us. Sometimes silence tells you more than questions ever could. They told me not to tell you, she blurted out, wiping her nose with a crumpled napkin. Uncle Mike, your dad, they said you're bad for the image. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face still. Bad for the image, I repeated, letting the words settle on my tongue like something spoiled. Beth nodded miserably. They didn't want questions, you know, about why you're different, why you don't come to church anymore, why you don't fit the mold. She hiccuped and tried for a smile that didn't quite land. You know how it is. Investors, appearances. Dad said, Her voice broke. He said you're a reminder of past failures. The words hit harder than I thought they would. Not just forgotten, not just inconvenient. A failure. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened, the wood digging into my palms, grounding me when everything else inside felt like it was slipping sideways. Beth, I said evenly, thank you for telling me. She sniffled. They made me promise, Claire. I'm sorry. I nodded once, ending the call before she could spiral into another drunken apology. The kitchen settled around me, too quiet now. The hum of the fridge, the soft tick of the clock, the small, solid life I had built standing quietly at my back. They hadn't just excluded me. They hadn't just replaced me. They had decided I didn't belong anymore, and once I knew that, I couldn't unknow it. The next morning, the sun rose hot and sharp, glaring through my apartment windows like it had something to prove. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Beth's confession had landed the night before like a shard of glass, still glinting in the back of my mind. My coffee went cold between my hands as I stared at nothing, piecing together a puzzle I hadn't even realized I was working on. It wasn't just about the church or the way I lived my life. It was about something bigger, something transactional. The phone rang around 9. Mrs. Langford, the old neighbor who once slipped extra cookies into my Halloween bag and never quite managed to stay out of anyone's business. I heard about the reunion, dear, she said, her voice kind but brittle. I wanted to call before you heard it somewhere else. I stayed silent, letting her fill the space. Your father, she hesitated. He's been talking about the merger. Big deal, lots of investors sniffing around. Image is everything these days. I squeezed the phone tighter. Go on, I said quietly. They've been selling a story, Claire, she continued. 3 sons in prestigious careers, a united front, a family empire. Clean, successful, untouchable. And a daughter who doesn't fit the brochure. My voice didn't tremble. It sounded almost bored. There was a long pause, then a soft, reluctant, yes. I closed my eyes, feeling the pieces click into place. Slow, sickening, inevitable. It wasn't about me. It was about them, their deals, their face-saving, their story. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a wrinkle in the glossy photograph they needed to sell. An inconvenience. Mrs. Langford sniffled again. I'm sorry, dear. You deserved better. I thanked her politely, detached, and hung up before the pity in her voice could cling to me. The sun had moved halfway across the floor by the time I looked up. I sat there, tracing the golden arcs with my eyes, thinking about all the nights I'd stayed up helping Dad revise his business pitches in high school. The weekends spent answering phones in his crumbling office. The way I used to beam when he called me his little right hand. None of it mattered now. Not loyalty, not love. Not the past, because I wasn't marketable anymore. They hadn't just erased me. They had rewritten the entire story. I didn't throw my coffee mug. I didn't scream into a pillow. I didn't rage post a cryptic quote on social media. Instead, I rinsed my cup, wiped down the counter, and sat back down at the kitchen table, where the letter from Hawthorne Industries still lay unopened since yesterday. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled the letter free, smoothing it flat against the wood. The words stared back at me. Appointment to Chief Executive Officer. Effective immediately. I let the weight of it settle into my chest, not as a triumph, but as a quiet inevitability. They hadn't asked about my life because they had already decided what version of me suited their narrative. They didn't need the truth. They needed a clean story to sell, but stories had a way of slipping through fingers when you built them on lies. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering for a second over the contact list. Then I scrolled to a number I hadn't used in months. Mr. Hawthorne, my mentor, my advocate before I even knew I needed one. I hit call before I could overthink it. He answered on the second ring. Claire, he said warmly, like he'd been expecting me. I cleared my throat. I heard you're sponsoring the summer business gala this weekend. I am, he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. And there's a rather important table reserved for key partners. Why do you ask? I smiled, the first real smile in days. I was wondering if there might be a seat left. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. For you, Claire, there's always a seat. Actually, he added, I think it's time we made sure everyone sees who you are. We hung up with nothing more said. I set the phone down gently, feeling the tremor in my hand fade away. There would be no confrontation, no outburst, no scene. It would be simpler than that. It was time they remembered who they'd tried to forget. The Reynolds family reunion looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. White tents fluttered gently in the manicured backyard. String lights crisscrossed overhead, casting a warm golden haze over linen-draped tables. A string quartet played something elegant and forgettable near the koi pond. I arrived just as the first wave of champagne glasses were being distributed, stepping quietly among the crowd, unseen but not unnoticed. My father stood at the center of it all, tanned and grinning, a silver watch glinting at his wrist as he shook hands and slapped backs. He looked years younger under the flattering lights, buoyed by the right kind of company. All three of my brothers orbited close, perfect satellites in tailored suits. My stepmother, Lillian, floated between guests, her laugh tinkling high and artificial as she praised the bright future of the Reynolds family. They had rehearsed this. I could see it in the stiffness of their smiles, the way they clustered for every photo, heads tilted at just the right angles. Every detail, from the monogrammed napkins to the curated guest list, whispered the same desperate message. We are successful. We are untouchable. We are whole. The first speech came after the appetizers. My father tapped his champagne flute with a spoon, the sound sharp in the heavy summer air. The crowd fell silent immediately. He smiled, an old politician's smile, and launched into a speech about family, legacy, pride. Today, he said, lifting his glass higher, we celebrate not just our personal milestones, but the enduring spirit that defines the Reynolds name. A spirit unbroken, unified, with no weak links, a ripple of polite laughter. Cheers, toasts clinking. I stood near the back, hands folded lightly in front of me, letting the words wash over me like dirty water. I could see it in his eyes. He believed it. Every syllable. He had convinced himself that rewriting history wasn't betrayal. It was just good business. Maybe, in his mind, daughters who didn't fit the brochure simply didn't exist. I sipped my champagne and waited. Not angrily, not bitterly. Calm as a gathering storm. They raised their glasses higher, unaware the ground beneath them was already shifting. The black car rolled up to the edge of the drive just as the second round of speeches began. Heads turned instinctively, sensing importance. Out stepped Mr. Hawthorne, sharp in a dark suit that seemed to absorb the fading light. Conversations dipped to a hush, hands fumbled mid-toast. But it wasn't him they stared at. It was me. I stepped. Down beside him, my heels clicking once against the flagstone. Midnight blue silk caught the last blush of the sunset as I adjusted the strap of my dress, a small, deliberate movement that felt louder than any announcement. Faces blurred together. Neighbors, old friends, distant cousins, expressions flickering, between confusion and dawning recognition. My brothers froze, champagne flutes halfway to their mouths. My stepmother's smile collapsed so quickly it almost looked like a spasm. And my father? He just stared. There was a heartbeat of silence, thick and sticky in the summer heat. Then the quartet faltered mid-measure, bows dragging awkwardly across strings before someone hastily waved them back to life. I didn't rush. I let the moment stretch, breathing in the electric crackle of discomfort blooming across the garden. Mr. Hawthorne offered me his arm with a nod, and together we moved through the gathering, not around the edges, but straight through the center. Guests stepped aside instinctively, some offering tentative smiles, others whispering behind linen napkins. The ones who mattered, the ones who could make or break the merger my family had pinned their futures on, watched closely, expressions sharpening with curiosity. I caught my father's eye as we passed. For one fractured second, I saw something flicker there. Not anger, not even shame. Fear, cold and sharp, cutting through the practiced warmth of his public face. He opened his mouth slightly, maybe to call my name, maybe to pretend nothing had changed, but nothing came out. I tilted my chin up and walked on. The murmurs grew behind me, gathering momentum like a riptide. Somewhere across the lawn, I heard Lillian whisper harshly to one of my brothers. Something about timing, about damage control, but it was too late for that now, and when the whispers started, not even they could stop the tide. The dinner portion of the evening blurred past in a swirl of forced laughter and careful glances. I sat beside Mr. Hawthorne at the main table, my name printed crisply on the place card, positioned squarely between two senior partners from Hawthorne Industries. Every time I lifted my glass, I caught the corner of someone's eye flicking toward me, calculating. No one asked direct questions yet, but the curiosity was thick enough to taste. When dessert was served, tiny lemon tarts and espresso poured into delicate china. Mr. Hawthorne rose smoothly to address the gathering. The room hushed without him needing to ask. He spoke with easy authority, thanking the Reynolds family for hosting, praising the spirit of partnership and innovation that had brought everyone together. Then, almost casually, he pivoted. "We are especially proud," he said, lifting his glass, "to celebrate new leadership within our ranks, leadership that embodies resilience, vision, and a relentless commitment to excellence. Claire Reynolds has been appointed CEO of Hawthorne Industries, and we are honored to have her steering us into the future." A gasp, soft but unmistakable, rippled through the crowd. I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't flinch. I simply inclined my head in acknowledgement as the partners on either side of me raised their glasses. Around the garden, other glasses lifted, some hesitant, some eager, all inevitable. My father sat frozen 2 tables away, a smile still plastered to his face, frozen mid-expression like a man caught halfway through a lie. My brothers exchanged quick, nervous glances. Lillian dabbed at the corner of her mouth with a napkin, though there was nothing there to wipe away. Mr. Hawthorne continued, his tone light but unmistakably pointed. "True legacy," he said, his voice carrying across the hushed garden, "isn't built by clinging to the past. It's built by recognizing the brilliance that grows beyond it." Polite applause rose, scattered at first, then swelling as people realized. There was no safer direction to look but forward. I lifted my glass once more, the crystal catching the soft twinkle of the overhead lights. My hand was steady. My heart was steady. Across the lawn, my father's hand slowly lowered his own untouched glass. For the first time that evening, he truly looked at me. Not the version they had erased, but the woman standing now, undeniable. And in that moment, I saw it, the exact second their world cracked open. I didn't stay for the rest of the speeches. I didn't stay for the sudden brittle smiles or the cautious invitations to catch up soon. I slipped away as the next round of toasts began, my heels soundless against the stone path leading out to the drive. The night air was cooler now, touched with the faint scent of gardenias and something sharper beneath it. Panic, perhaps, or the slow unraveling of carefully laid plans. Behind me, the lights of the tent glowed golden and distant, a bubble I had finally, quietly stepped out of. My driver opened the car door with a practiced gesture. I slid inside without looking back. Through the tinted window, I caught a final glimpse of my father standing under the fairy lights, still holding his glass, still frozen mid-pose, as if he hadn't yet figured out which mask to put on, now that the old one had cracked. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. I simply felt nothing at all. The car pulled away, the hum of the engine low and steady. I rested my hand lightly on the envelope in my lap, the one that named me CEO, not because of bloodlines, not because of legacy, but because I had built something real when no one was watching. Some families are built from shared names and photographs. Others are built from the quiet, unshakable knowledge of who you are when no one applauds. I smiled faintly to myself as the city lights unfolded ahead. Forward was brighter than anything I'd left behind.